But let's bring in my panel now. Shadow Environment Minister Jonathan Duniam and Senior Fellow at the Menzies Research Centre, Nick Cater. Well, gentlemen, welcome. Jonathan Duniam, we've got this draft default market offer out. We've had it for 24 hours now. We've all chewed over it. There's reports today that 5 million households will see a significant increase in their bills if taxpayer subsidies aren't carried over. So there's a double whammy there, taxpayers and actual consumers. Now, they're never going to deliver this $275 power bill cut as they promised. In fact, the analysis has proven if you live in Western Sydney, and it's like this around the country, that under Labor, your bill's gone up $750. This is the disappointment.
Well, disappointment's a very generous understatement, I've got to say. I mean, the fact is it was a core promise of the last election to bring down power prices amongst other cost of living pressures, power prices by $275. Analysis shows that an ordinary average household has had their power bills go up by over $1,000, nearly 40% increase under this government. Now, you rightly point out, Peter, that their answer to this is to subsidise these bills. It is taxpayers' money. The same people who are paying the higher power bills are having their tax dollars go to offsetting their power bill. That's not cheaper power. The answer is in supply, and the government haven't once turned their policy brains to how to attract more investment in bringing on more supply. And until they do that, until they get their blinkers off and remove the ideology from their approach here, we are going to see power prices to continue to go up.
And Nikita, this is a money go round, right? The only people getting rich in the case there from Jono is the power companies, funded by taxpayers, funded by consumers who are getting greater and greater licks of money coming in. And in the case of these wind turbines, I mean, I am furious that trade action's been dropped. We'll be flooded yet again with Chinese wind turbines. 90-odd% of our market comes from China. Ditto with photovoltaics, solar panels. And of course, we know they're banking on offshore wind in a big way to get to these targets. A lot of those companies are foreign owned. You know, they're out of the Netherlands, they're out of Norway, they're out of Europe. Australians will lose jobs here. The money's not staying in Australia. They're all bankrolled by our subsidies. And the poor old punter in Penrith are paying power bills that they are literally making decisions. Can they afford to turn a heater on in a country as rich and resource prosperous as Australia?
Yeah, it's bad enough that most of this investment is coming from overseas and so the profits will go overseas. But it's worse in the case of China, and giving the green light to China to just move in to the turbine market and do what it did with solar panels, which is basically to become the dominant player in the market as a first step to becoming the only player in the market. 85% of the world's solar panels come from China. Then we're just walking straight into a trap, Peter, we really are. And it's the same with electric vehicles. 87% of the electric vehicles bought in Australia last year came from China, and that includes 2 Teslas, the Tesla Y and the Tesla Model 3. And then you go to the transmission lines, where all the steel, the aluminium cable, the whole box and dice is largely coming from China. We are going to be absolutely in debt to China by the end of the century, end of the decade. Sorry, we won't be able to do anything in the energy sector without them. And Chris Bowen talks about us becoming a renewable energy superpower. I mean, he's delusional, quite frankly, Peter. China is already the dominant renewable energy superpower and will be the only one for some time to come.
And of course, Jono, alongside national security, increasingly, there's the term energy security, and if Nick's scenario plays out, which it will, our terms of trade will go the other way. You know, a wind turbine is a lot more expensive than a lobster. We'll owe China money. We're already deeply in debt. We owe a lot of our money overseas. Well, we'll owe it to China. But we're also, in an energy security sense, incredibly vulnerable. I mean, how do we fight back against a Chinese invasion in our region if China's paying our power bills, supplying our power in this country? I mean, this is what concerns me, is how short-sighted all of this is. For what? For what? We're not even 1 and a bit % of global emissions.
Yeah, again, ideology driving decision-making around the future of our country is always going to end in disaster. COVID was a very expensive lesson, and you have the Labor Party telling us that we spent $1 trillion with nothing to show for it. You know, we have a functioning economy at the end of it, I might point out. But one thing I got out of COVID was the fact that we as a country should be more self-reliant, should be more dependent on our own resources rather than the resources of other foreign powers like China or other countries for that matter. So the decisions that are being made that make us more exposed and more vulnerable, leading us into a situation where we will be paying more at the behest of other countries, I think is gross negligence on the part of this government. And again, as I said before, there's no answer. There's no response to this problem. They don't seem to think it's a problem in the Labor Party. They're happy to sign our sovereignty away in many areas, including in energy security, it appears. And that is incredibly concerning for every Australian of every demographic in every part of the country.
I might add too, I mean, I sat here talking to someone who was making masks. The only Australian manufacturer of masks during COVID left, and they had to send the army in because they didn't have enough workers. We were importing all of our masks from China and we weren't getting any. Just quickly before we go, Nick, UNRWA, the government's put the money back in. A lot of opposition to that. The inquiry into links between UNRWA and October 7 still has not concluded. Penny Wong, though, was out there saying she has, quote, necessary confidence that all of our aid would go to Gaza. Are you confident that's right?
I have zero confidence, Peter. This is a reckless and dangerous decision. It's driven by appeasing the left in the Labor Party. It's nothing to do with the facts on the ground, which all suggest that we should stay clear of UNRWA for the time being.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Senator Dunningham. See you both next week.